I'm Sally Rain, and I will be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and the art that's all around us. Talk Art is sponsored by the Silicon Valley Open Studios. During the first 3 weekends in May, hundreds of artists open their studio to the public. For more information, go to the website svos.org. Our guest is Kristen Olson, an American Impressionist painter. She is an award-winning artist who also instructs painting classes, and she recently moved to Palo Alto from Hawaii and has an impressive portfolio of landscapes from both California and Hawaii. So welcome, Kristen.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Yes, and so when people hear the word Impressionist, they often think of someone like Monet or Renoir, 19th century era paintings. But you are an American Impressionist today. Tell us what that means to you.
Well, Impressionism is capturing the light on the subject, capturing your impression and putting in just enough indications, brushwork and elements to describe what you feel about a place and not be focused on creating necessarily a portrait of the place, but your impression, your feelings, and the light and the mood and whatever it is that you want to say about it. That's impressionist and soft and beautiful and somewhat descriptive.
So it's realistic painting, but not so exact that it's like a portrait.
Right.
Very nice, yes, and beautiful colors too and lighting.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get involved with painting and being an artist?
My whole life, I think I was born an artist. I've always loved to draw and paint, and I had a lot of encouragement from my family, and went to art school in both New York and then California to the California Art Institute.
Nice.
And just miles and miles of canvas.
That I believe.
Painting and painting.
Excellent. So when you look at a landscape, what do you see and how do you choose your compositions?
I usually have a place in mind that I'd like to go paint, and when I get there I walk around, and I like to go to places either early in the morning or late in the afternoon.
Why is that?
Because the light is more interesting and it's more dramatic.
Oh, coming in from an angle, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Creates longer shadows and just it has an interesting quality of light. For instance, light in the late afternoon can be very golden, and that's dramatic in itself. And so I look around for just whatever captures my attention, which is usually just the way something is lit. And I usually see more than one thing that I'd like to paint.
Oh, of course.
And I only have so many hours. So
exactly.
You pick something and paint. And I also take a lot of photographs, and with light in mind. And
do you primarily start most of your paintings outside, or do they mostly come from photographs?
I would say about 50% outside and 50% in the studio. That's how I divide my time.
Do you ever start something outside and finish it in your studio?
Very often.
Yeah.
In fact, I almost finish everything in the studio, whether it started from photographs or outside. Yeah.
So, but when you're outside, though, and you paint over a period of time, the light changes. The sun moves, clouds come by. How do you deal with that?
It's true. That's the great thing about painting from life, and it's also the great challenge. Being able to when you start a painting, if you start drawing in all the shadows, which I do, and kind of capturing the scene as it is in the moment, makes it easier to start to paint.
So you brought some images of a painting that you created in Rockaway Beach.
Yes.
In Pacifica, in California.
Yes.
And you took photographs of it as it progressed. So let's take a look at those now, and you can describe that process
okay.
as we look.
There I am at Rockaway Beach. all set up with my tripod easel and umbrella, ready to start painting. This is a picture of the scene I was looking at.
Is that a photograph?
That's a photograph.
Okay.
Yes, of Rockaway Beach with the really interesting sea rocks. And this is my initial drawing, which is drawn actually with paint. And I've drawn the shadows so that I can remember them as the light changes later. They're already there, so I can paint over them.
So that's the underlayer of the paint.
Yes, the underpainting.
Excellent.
And here I've started to add some color. I started with the ocean. And
what colors were you choosing there? Why did you?
I used Viridian, cobalt blue, French ultramarine, sap green. The water had a lot of green in it that day. There was a lot of sand and waves. The water was very churned up.
So it still looks patchy, though. Oh, look
Yes,
at that.
it was a big challenge trying to capture all the movement in the ocean that day. Here you can see I started to add some of the waves and white water, and the cliff cast a beautiful shadow that was very blue, and it extended into the water.
Was that there when you started, or is that something you
That was
added
there.
as you went? That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great spot. Here I've added the sky and the fog that was thankfully out at sea that day.
Yeah, that happens sometimes, just waiting to come in.
This painting has a wonderful sense of air, and it's just naturally dramatic looking.
How did you choose that one wave and freeze it like that in your mind?
I think when you paint, you sort of learn to take pictures with your eyes when you're painting on location and remember them. And sometimes you have to stop and just watch them for a while, sort of like a surfer watches the waves.
Yep.
And so here I've put in softened the colors in the sand and put in some cool violets and added more rhythm to the water and some more sea rocks over on the left side.
Yeah, so you can still sort of see the green, but it's not as pronounced as it was when you began.
Yes.
Very nice.
Thank you.
So you have brought your easel and some paints,
Mm-hmm.
and you can demonstrate to us how you create your paintings.
So here I have an assortment of brushes. These are filberts and flats and brights. They're hog bristle brushes primarily. And I also have a couple of sable and synthetic sable brushes. I have a rigger brush, and this one is called a cat's tongue. And this painting is painting of a fall vineyard. This is from Napa Valley, up near St. Helena. This is painted from pictures taken late in the day, and it's near completion, but needs a little more work. And so I'm going to demonstrate painting that. On my palette, I have earth tones here, white, and then I have an array of colors from yellow to blue. I arrange my palette the same way every time so that I always know where the colors are. I have Payne's gray, cool gray, transparent oxide red, transparent oxide brown. These are transparent colors, and this is an opaque brown. This is burnt sienna, yellow ochre, Naples yellow, titanium white, and then I have a cool and warm of each of the other hues. So this would be a cool yellow, which is lemon, cadmium lemon, and a warmer yellow, cadmium yellow medium, cadmium yellow deep, cadmium orange, cadmium red, permanent rose, permanent alizarin. This is sap green, viridian, indigo, cobalt blue, and ultramarine.
So why so many colors? Not everyone uses all of them.
Yes, I like to have a lot of colors because I'm used to working with a lot of colors, and I like to have colors that are really pure. I like to have the contrast of some of them being opaque and some of them being transparent. They all have different mixing qualities, and I almost never use paint just straight from the tube. I always mix it with something, and it's fabulous to have a lot of colors to paint with. I love them all.
So what are you going to do for us today?
So this painting this has the area that is the center of interest, and the center of interest is the part of the painting that has the highest contrast in terms of value, value being light and dark, and also the brightest colors. And it's the focal point of the painting. The rest of the painting has colors and composition that support this area. And so it needs a little bit more work and a little more definition of the grape leaves coming up here. And so I'm going to work on that for a couple of minutes. And this is odorless mineral spirits.
So much better than the old turpentine.
Yes. And I didn't say this is on a canvas I stretched myself. It's Belgian linen, Claessens number 13, which is my very favorite. When I paint, I stand back a lot and look at the whole painting, and I work on some of the details fairly closely. So I'm mixing a little ultramarine with alizarin. I want to put some darker leaves against the background. I feel the painting needs more texture, more detail. And in the style of the Impressionists, I'm painting small brushstrokes indicating leaves, but not actually trying to paint a leaf or several leaves. Just enough brushstrokes and enough indications of color and transitions in value to indicate the shape of the vineyard in fall.
It definitely looks like grapevines, though. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. All the little brushstrokes come together and create a beautiful vineyard. I missed fall living in Hawaii, so it's nice to be back on the mainland and getting to experience the change of seasons. This is a wonderful place to be a landscape painter. California has a lot to offer, a lot of beautiful landscapes and a lot of variety. So if I were to use a color directly without mixing it, this would be the area to use it. I'm going to put a little bit of this cadmium red light here, which is a very opaque and orangey red. And it's in great contrast to the bluish mountains behind it. I also like to paint light over dark. So while I've painted some dark brushstrokes up here for these leaves, I'm painting a little bit of light over them, a little bit lighter color. I'm going to put that brush down, pick this one up, and I'm mixing a little bit of burnt sienna and alizarin crimson. And I'm going to think about just creating a few more leaves. Think of them just sort of dancing across the canvas.
So your intent with this painting is to draw the viewer's eye more towards the center?
Right. So this area, for instance, is very grayed down. And this area over here is also very grayed down, which helps it recede. And this area is much brighter. And so it's as if the light is focused there. So now I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow. So this is a warm yellow. I've mixed a little bit of cadmium yellow deep with titanium white. I'm going to put that right here. It's not quite bright enough. I'm going to make it a little bit brighter. I always hold my brush from far back towards the end of the handle, and I try to keep my brush strokes fairly loose. I have a very steady hand, but I don't like to hold my brush too close up on the handle because it makes the brush stroke seem too stiff. Now I'm going to grab another brush, and I'm going to use the cadmium lemon, which is the cool yellow. And it's almost a greenish yellow. Again, this is another opaque color, and I'm mixing it with a little titanium white. Titanium white mixed with any color lightens it and also cools it. Can you see how bright that is in contrast with the other yellows?
Yeah, how much of that are you going to use?
Just a few places, just a few brush strokes right in the center of interest. And what it does is it gives the painting a focal point of light. And otherwise the whole painting is sort of saying hello to you at once. And it's better to be, I can't think of the word, to be careful not to use too much in the painting. Otherwise, if you use too much of the bright colors, they sort of lose their impact and the painting becomes garish. And while I like to have a lot of color and bright colors, I like the painting to also have a lot of soft areas and lots of variety. I have a lot of greens here, blues and pinks, and also the ground here was very wet that day. And I will put in a few indications. This is a little bit of cobalt blue and titanium white, a few indications of wet ground. That's still too dark. I always keep a paper towel in my hand, so I seem to need to have just the right touch of paint.
So you work with very, very delicate, small paintbrush, just like the Impressionists. I see it now. So is this painting almost completed?
Yes, it's almost completed.
Excellent. So you brought some images of paintings that are completed. Why don't we take a look at those now and
Sure.
see what the very final stages of those paintings are. So what is this one?
This is a vineyard painting. This is from Sonoma, with the sun going down behind the hills and a eucalyptus tree on the left.
And what's the next one?
This was painted at Half Moon Bay at Marsh & Sons Pumpkin Patch. And it was a pumpkin that hadn't been picked yet. And I love the brushwork in this painting. It's just beautiful to see the pumpkins growing in the field. And
so do you often do close-ups? Because most of the paintings that we've seen today have been broader landscapes.
That's true. Again, it was what captivated me. I arrived on the scene. I met with the Half Moon Bay painters that day, and that's what I picked to paint because it was just beautiful.
Nice depth of field to that one. I really like it.
Thank you. Oh, this was a painting from the Stanford Stables, which is another beautiful place to paint, full of beautiful horses, Victorian barn, and lots of riders coming and going.
I can definitely see the technique that you used to focus us in the middle on that one, that beautiful, bright.
I like the design of that painting.
Yeah, and the shadow casting to the side. It's very nice.
Thank you. This is a Silomar beach in Carmel at sunset, and this is a beautiful painting. It has a lot of soft water on the rocks. It's very tranquil and peaceful and has that late evening glow with the fog.
And so when we look at that, I can see that you have some very dark elements in the front, and it gets less dark and less detailed in the back. Is that typically how you approach a painting?
It is typically how I approach a painting. The darkest values of any color and the brightest and most intense will usually be in the foreground, which is the front part of the painting. And as colors recede, they become softer and grayer as they go into the distance. And so the brushwork needs to be blended more, and the colors need to be softened. And to gray a color, you add its opposite. For instance, if you were to gray red, you would add a little green to it, and it would just soften the red.
Just a little
tone
tiny
it down.
bit? Oh, interesting. So that the orange and the blue in this painting is how you made the gray? Am I right?
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. This is a field of California poppies and hills behind Stanford University in the winter when they're nice and green.
Yeah, it's green. Beautiful. And so what made you choose that particular angle? What are you looking at there?
I just loved how the trees went into the hills. There's a nice sense of mystery in this painting, and when I look at it, it makes me want to go way, way back into the mountains and find out what's there. As beautiful as the foreground is, it has a nice sense of mystery.
Yeah, it sort of draws you back into the hills there.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Thanks. This was a house I painted in Woodside. It was just a beautiful old farmhouse, and it had a lot of dried grass in the front, and the maple tree in front, it's liquid amber tree in the front, was just beautiful in contrast to the house.
So where would you say the focal point of that painting is?
The focal point of that painting is the light hitting the roof, the corner of the roof there that sticks out and the porch. And that's what captivated me, was the light coming around the corner of the roof and ending up in the tree where the leaves are yellow and spilling out onto the lawn. And most of the rest of the painting is in shadow, which makes the light so much more dramatic.
Yeah, it's beautiful painting. Wow.
Thank you. This is another vineyard painting of fall in Sonoma. And this is a very small painting, 6 inches by 6 inches.
Wow.
And but it has a lot of brush strokes, expressive brush strokes. And
what size brushes do you use for that size painting?
I use number 4 and number 6 filbert brushes for that painting.
So very small.
Yeah, fairly small. And you can see the concentrated yellows in the center of that also. So
you used a similar technique. So this would be the painting that you were showing us.
Yeah, something similar.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Is there another one? Nope, that's it. So you have some beautiful paintings, and you work outside and you bring your paintings into the studio. Tell me a little bit about, painting a very small painting versus painting a very large painting. How does that work in your mind?
Well, I do a lot of small paintings with the idea that someday they may become big paintings, sort of like color studies. Small paintings need to have really strong compositions because they need to have impact and be able to be seen from across the room even though they're small.
Mm-hmm.
Large paintings, of course, can have a lot more detail and a lot more elements. You can squeeze a lot more into a bigger space. Right. And I take a lot longer to paint bigger paintings and put a lot of care and detail in the brushwork.
So how long would it take to create a 6-inch by 6-inch painting, would you say?
Between 1 and 3 hours.
1 and 3 hours, the completed painting is done. Wow.
Uh-huh. And a big painting like one of these 30 by 40s could take up to a month, sometimes 2 weeks. So quite a lot longer.
Yeah. So do you have any upcoming shows that you'd like to tell us about? What are you going to be doing in the near future?
I do. I have a one-woman show coming up at Portola Art Gallery, which is in Menlo Park. I have a show at Gallery Mistral that's going to be hung this coming Saturday, this weekend.
Where is that?
That's in Redwood Shores.
Okay.
It's a group show. And I have several workshops coming up.
Are these workshops that you're teaching?
Workshops that I'm teaching.
Good.
Some one-day workshops and some 3-day workshops in the Bay Area and then also in Sacramento.
So what could someone expect at a workshop that you teach? What do you teach?
My workshops are open to oil, acrylic, and watercolor painters, and also gouache. I give a demonstration the first day in the morning. Sometimes it takes about 2.5 to 3 hours. And then we usually break for lunch, and the students paint the rest of the afternoon and the next day. And the next day, if it's 3 days. I encourage students to paint small paintings so we can cover a lot of material.
Right.
And everybody gets a lot of individual help at their easel. And I give other demonstrations and talks on color.
So these are for people who have their easels already and their brushes all chosen?
Some.
Or do you provide some of that?
Everyone brings their own materials. And the workshops are open to beginners and advanced painters.
Excellent.
And everyone in between.
Is there anything else coming up in your future?
Just a lot more painting.
Excellent. You mentioned something about an e-book.
Oh yes, I'm working on an e-book on the topic of finishing a painting, because it seems to be, I get asked a lot of questions by students. How do you know when a painting is finished? And
exactly.
How do you analyze it? And so I've been working on an e-book to describe that. It's sort of a checklist on how to finish a painting.
Oh yeah, do you have any quick tips for people when you look at it? You just know it's done, or what are you looking for?
When you start a painting, as I talked about before, it's sort of an emotional response to the landscape.
Right.
And you're responding to light and color, and you're excited about whatever it is that you're painting. And then as the painting progresses, the technique shifts to becoming more analytical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an analytical process where you go over composition. You analyze it in terms of value. You ask yourself questions like, do I have the full range of values from 1 to 10?
Excellent.
Is the light focused?
Thank you very much. And since you just moved here, this is going to be your very first Silicon Valley Open Studio show, isn't it?
Yes.
So welcome.
Thank you.
So glad you're in the area.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Thank you for being on Talk Art.
Thank you.